Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Motherhood Channel. I'm Quinn Brown Huffman, and with me is,
Tanya Meeks.
it's really exciting to keep going with this. We have done a few episodes now, and I want to clarify a few things. When we record these, we are recording them on Zoom so we can see one another and we
Yeah.
get really excited.
And then we talk really fast. Maybe it's the two Gemini moon, Gemini sun. It's like a
Yeah, we
lot of
match
time.
one another in that
Yeah.
way. So we are going to try and just clarify that. If you want to see the visuals of how we see one another, it's on YouTube, the Motherhood Channel. So find us on YouTube. But if you go to Instagram, the Motherhood Channel, all those links are there for Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube, our websites. It's all available. And here we talk about whatever comes up for us as mothers and artists.
Mhm.
And we are on day 8 of a challenge that we created for ourselves as artists to have some playground in this channel. So you're welcome to watch those on YouTube. And it's been a fun challenge, but it's taken some courage. How do you feel about it?
I feel it, it's been, it's funny. I actually initially, I'm the one that was like, let's do 365 days without clarifying with you or anyone else. It's like, and initially I was like, yeah, it's been really good. It was like it was excitement. Then I was like, oh wow, this is a lot. And then now I'm just like, oh, I get to do this every day. And it's more of there's more of a flow to it. And then the idea that we're just going to put up whatever shows up, that I don't need to like, oh, record 5 different videos and then upload it. I'm just going to record and then upload no matter what shows up. And then there's not as much, it gives more room for how I created the one woman show, was just to go in a theater and improv and then piece together what showed up rather than it trying to figure out what needs to show up. So I think it leaves room for spirit or unconscious to piece those things that need to come up to the surface that are percolating rather than trying to figure it out intellectually, which I love. And then it's small snippets. So it's been really fun, actually.
It has been. It's
It for
been a
you? Yeah.
really, yeah, it's been a really interesting experience of the daily commitment of it,
Yeah.
because it engages that part of me that really wants to have a space, I realize.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I was sitting, because I'm really diving in, making it, you're more courageous than me. I'm diving in with my book that I wrote in 2020.
Yeah,
So I've
yeah.
written it, I've lived it, I made a show of it, and now I'm sharing it in a whole nother way. So I'm really moving through it pretty slowly and really intentionally re-engaging poetry and the prose that came through in that time. And so I'm building like a whole new relationship with my book, and what came through for me is like, well, where does this land? Who does this land for?
Oh,
And
that's interesting.
then I realized, you know what? It's enough if my mother watches it. That is
Yeah,
every.
yeah,
And then I
yeah.
watched you, and you're engaging your mom so beautifully. You're really a conduit. You're channeling her through. So when you watch Tanya's videos on YouTube,
Mm.
she takes these daily snippets and she's channeling her mom. And and Rose, you are amazing. She
I
is an
know.
amazing human being. And it got me on the topic of the value of our mothers witnessing. That's why I'm transitioning
Mm-hmm.
this conversation that way, because I think that's sort of the theme of the day intuitively came up, is our witnessing of our children is born out of us being witnessed. And as artists, how important it is for our work to land somewhere,
And to be seen,
be
for our
seen.
work to be seen too. And I think there's something for just showing up and having the space and then letting it be seen and not trying to figure out, like figuring out, like when I did the show, there was like a pipeline of people that came and I figured out like a marketing kind of strategy, but that happened organically. So, but I think that there's this theory now that I think most artists are trying to figure out like who's going to see it and how am I going to get people there? And then all of this like static and energy around how are people going to see it instead of just putting it out there and seeing what happens and who lands, who arrives to see it and what things may open up that we might not have considered otherwise. Because I can feel part of myself when I start to do it. I'm like, am I talking about parenting? Am I talking about motherhood? Like I'm talking about spiritual. I'm like all over the place, which so it's never fit. Um, so part of me was like, maybe I should make this more linear for people. Like, oh, we're gonna talk about 0 through 5 this day, but my personality's never been that way.
No,
I'm like, it's like the Wild West on there. We don't know what Anna Rose,
no,
my
and
mom,
that's
who's Anna
if
Rose.
I think that's, I want to say that's brilliant because if you're
Mhm.
coming to this channel looking for a linear world where we're going to go from point A to B and you're going to get this and that and the other in it, then then
Might have,
welcome, but it's going to be uncomfortable because we don't work that way. You and
yeah,
me are both very very spontaneous, organic. This whole thing came about in a very spontaneous way,
yes.
and it gives us the space to share the chaos of motherhood in the most
Mhm.
beautiful way because it's cyclical, it's chaotic because it doesn't fit a mold. And you know what came up for me this weekend so incredibly much is that the discomfort that so many sit with, the dis-ease in the role playing of mother, father,
Yeah,
daughter,
yeah.
whatever, all these roles we play in our culture, in our society. I feel that there's such dis-ease because people are trying to fit a mold
Mm,
that's
hmm.
not theirs. And so what
Yeah,
if
yeah,
if
yeah.
we start fresh? So this is the space where I feel like we're exploring all these different ways of being as artists and mothers, and ultimately all people are creatives if they redefine it for themselves.
Hmm.
But to come back to, you know, the witnessing of the parent as a really hugely impactful thing. It's
Hmm.
so, I just think it's one of the greatest gifts I probably ever received. Really feeling seen by my parents.
Hmm.
Even when I got mad at them for seeing me, I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah. Even in the complexity of being seen and the pushback of it all.
right? The adolescence where you want to just kind of hide and say, not yet, not yet. I'm not ready to be seen. Um, but I see when we don't have that, and I think about Sparrow and I think about Laura and Charlotte,
Hmm.
what they get from us because we see the value of that, you know. I see that when my daughter, when Charlotte, here's a story. When Charlotte, I saw her misunderstanding a statement I made
Mm,
about Laura and her dad. And
hmm.
I saw her misunderstanding and going, oh, well, then I don't fit there. And so now I'm jealous of whatever they have.
Yeah, because I'm
And
not part
later
of it. Yeah.
day, I could go back because it caught my attention because I really I really study my kids.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I do too.
And I could go back to it and I say, you know what? I just feel like I want to explain what I meant by that statement because it feels like you really need to understand where that was coming from. And when I said to her, this is what I meant, they are two people that relate in this way with each other. It didn't mean you don't have your own relationship with him and it would be look like this. And I saw the weight fall from her
Like her
shoulders and
shoulders
she could
drop at her.
go,
Like, yeah.
yeah, she's like, oh,
Oh,
thanks, Mom. I said, does that make sense? She's like, yes, thank you for saying it. Thank you for clarifying. She, you know, as a young little 11-year-old. So,
no.
yeah, I was like, yeah, we need to not just brush over things so quickly
Hmm.
because things leave like residue. It's
And big
interesting.
impressions. I think the thing as a parent is the ability to really like remember that we know our children kind of better than anybody else, if that makes sense. Like our ability to intuitively know and track kind of what's happening and to trust that. Does that make sense? I think sometimes, um, before I was a mom, and I still have the tendency to do that, but less now, is I took everyone's opinion. I did like a national poll on every decision I made. I would ask a stranger. It didn't matter. I would just ask anybody that entered my pathway, without really any discernment. It doesn't mean I like, but then that all had to get like swirled through, and then I had to filter through all that data. And becoming a mom, I suddenly felt more protective of my autonomy as a parent. And people were
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, we're used to just throwing out all of our, that's how you've always been. And I was like, oh yeah, that did shift. And it was something that I would have never predicted shifting. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I still don't sometimes try it, but then I'm way more protective of like, no, actually, that's not, that's like I can feel when it's someone else's projection of their stuff or just stuff, you can track it, but there's
Right.
this
And
sense of like, oh, I'm in this and no one, like, not that I don't want to talk or process, but it's more as a collective, like, oh, I just want to share what's happening. I don't want you to direct the ship. I just want to like share around a campfire and just that idea that we
right.
need to share and have community but not be
Yes.
redirected or someone else to take the reins.
And that's such a key thing. I mean, and that takes me back to every circle that I hold and
Mhm.
how seen both of those things happen and how so specifically it is the guideline around
Yeah.
women gathering,
Mhm.
whether it's around the table with wine and food or if it is in a sacred circle, is like we're not here to advise or fix because nothing's broken, but
Yes.
we all need a space to share. Oh my gosh, we need to share. We need to be able to vent and to have a meltdown and be witnessed. We
Yeah.
need to be witnessed because otherwise it's lonely, and it's in the witnessing that we become less lonely and less isolated. But I think there's so many advice givers out there and fixers, and that the whole sentiment around if it doesn't look like mine or if it doesn't look like something I'll be comfortable with, it must be wrong. I got to fix it. And we got to stop that with one another. Please, everybody, just stop trying to fix each other because actually nothing's broken.
Yeah, and everybody just wants to be seen and heard. It makes me think of when I was in the performance program in the dance theater kind of component of it. There was people who do authentic movement, and basically the idea is that you're in a circle, there's a mover in the center, and you're all witness. And then maybe some people will have another person come in, it'll be more of a collaborative, but you move with your eyes closed and you're just witness. So it sounds like, well, what's the big deal? But it was such a powerful, pivotal thing to move vulnerably with your eyes closed. You weren't crafting material, you were simply moving, but it was so beautiful,
That's
the things that came out of
amazing.
it. But the piece of that, and I think the desire and the thing I found in performance and sharing art was that there is a desire to have that reciprocal relationship, to share and to be
Mm.
seen. And then that's like a mirroring. It's a reciprocal relationship between the audience and the performer. But just like we all want to be seen and heard, and that's, I think, when I think about our desire to do this is for other moms and people and community to be seen and heard and to feel like there's space to share vulnerably the beautiful parts, the uncomfortable parts, all of it, like all of the, yeah, just all of it without having to
All of the
hide parts of it. Yeah.
right, exactly. And really stepping into that, there's no right or wrong because
Mhm.
that creates spaciousness just for all the different ways people want to be as parents, as mothers, children, artists. So much space. There is incredible amount of space to innovate and create in. I love it. I love it. And I mean, I want to ask you about like how does it feel now that you're recording a lot with your mom coming through that channel? I mean, you're channeling your mother when you do these daily videos.
On the motherhood channel, which is kind of funny, just saying. Just
Oh
saying. We didn't plan that. I just say it feels good because I feel like the piece that I miss from performing is I feel like I had an ongoing relationship with her on stage. Does that make sense? It felt like alive and vibrant and there was a connection. And it's funny when I um started doing these Sparrow, like for some reason he loves it. And the other day I got up and he was like, I don't remember. I did something and he was like, did you record some of those without me? And I was like, oh, I didn't know you liked it that much. And it's just an interesting piece for him to be able to also be excited to see.
he's Nana, he's grandma.
Yeah,
Right.
like just exciting that he's excited to hear the stories. And what I realize is that he really wants to hear stories and like a
Mm.
variety of things of complexity, not just like yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but I feel like it's been exciting. And I feel like for people to remember that their little ones want to hear stories about our lives and their lives. And it doesn't have to be so simple. It can be really deep and complex and they can actually handle it. But
They can handle so much more than we think. My Laura is her favorite thing is to say, tell me a story about your childhood. Tell
yeah,
me a story about when you did this. Tell me your most embarrassing story. She is endlessly
curious. Yeah, yeah.
desiring and curious about our lives. And thank goodness, because Ryan has many stories that he tells really well. I find it interesting. I still need to really dive into that with them, with my life. Um,
Are you more cautious with share? Not
I'm
cautious, but
cautious with sharing purely because not cautious. I'm not cautious. I am at a loss.
mm.
I don't remember that much.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I'm starting to remember through them. And so, but it's, yeah, it's a very interesting
It's not as
relationship.
accessible. So you don't have like, oh, I can pluck from 50,000 stories that are zooming around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I
maybe
think I
there's
still have
something
my
in,
own thing around it that I need to come to terms with. And then I'm excited. I'm excited to get to a place where I have ease in my sharing with them around my life and my stories. There's
Mhm.
certain things, but it's more from my adult world and more my
Less of your
teenage,
childhood.
but my early childhood, not as viscerally accessible as a story. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder if when it pops up through them, does it pop up like when they're doing something, you're like, oh, I remember. And then in that moment, just sharing, like, oh, yeah, I remembered something. And they might be really excited because they'll be like, oh, you don't always remember. Like, it'll be like this exciting discovery for both of you or for all of you, not
Exactly.
both of you, but for
Yeah.
all the people.
Yeah, I think so. And the more I recognize that I do love, just storytelling and giving myself more room around that, it's
Mhm.
growing. It's definitely growing. And I agree with you. The kids, they can handle and they get so much out of it. So not to be afraid to share where we come from and what, shaped our world.
And the truth of it, you know,
Truth of it, not try and sugarcoat it.
not like, oh, everything was, I don't even know how we started talking about something. And he, yeah, he craves those stories and those details. Like it was something about a babysitter. He's like, did you have babysitters? And I was like, yeah, my mom were, and he was like, did you like them all? And I was like, no. He's like, tell me about one you didn't like.
Yes.
He's like, and then what happened? And then he like almost wants me to like repeat these same stories, but all of it is so fascinating, to
Uh,
him. Simple
And
things
I
and complex things. And yeah, they're fascinated.
They are. They're finding their own rhythm through knowing where they come from.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
It's really working with that energy of, I think here's another part of it for me is, and I think why there's this odd space of reluctance or I'm at a loss with it is because working in the metamorphosis space as a
Hmm.
practitioner, I work with the hereditary memory that we are where we come from. So what we conceived with, what we inherit karmically and cosmically and
All of it. Yeah.
genetically from
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
blood
Yeah.
has a huge impact on our behavior, on our experience of our life.
Hmm.
And with metamorphosis, I'm working with the energy to really streamline our pure consciousness, our sense of source, so that we are not, so that we keep the good stuff,
Yes.
but that keeps us safe and keeps us knowing evolution and all of that good stuff, but allows us not to get attached to the pain or the tension of it.
Hmm.
So we're trying to bring the balance back. And I wonder, I'm just out loud wondering whether there's a part of me that did not want to attach my story to theirs, but I think it happens inevitably. And the more I speak about
I'm
it, the more I
totally.
share,
Yeah.
see how I'm working this through with you right now
No,
out
I
loud.
love it. I love it. And yeah, it's perfect.
I see the value, and I think because Ryan shares so freely, I see how they respond and how it actually frees them up to be more clearly who they are without all that baggage, actually. So
Yeah. So was your fear if you were sharing too much of your story that it created too much structure of your story overlaying on their own autonomy kind of thing?
and maybe there's a part of it that says when you are a girl mom,
Mm.
it's easier to hear stories from the dad because he is separate from you
Yeah,
just
yeah, I
because
get it.
of gender.
Hmm.
As they go, as their mom and them being girls, they attach themselves in a different way to me. They girls watch their moms
Like
so intensely,
microscopically. Yeah. Yeah.
piecing it together. And I know I did that with mine. And it took me a minute to detach and find my own from
Autonomy from your mom's.
autonomy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's just feeling it into every day, depending on where they are in their growth and in their landscape with their own lives. And I just want to make sure they live their story and not mine.
I totally get that. So I think, I grew up with a single mom who definitely, as an adult, I was parentified and I had all this data and it was so many stories and it was very adult content that was not screened or edited. And I think I was more cautious, interestingly enough, to share because I didn't want to repeat that pattern that was passed down. So it's not that I wouldn't share, but I was probably more guarded than I naturally would be because I was like, maybe I might have the tendency to do the same thing because that was my lens, and I didn't want to create another parentified system. But when I start to share it is interesting. He like loves it. And I was like, I love some of my best memories are my mom coming home from waiting tables late, getting me up. I don't know why she woke me up. You know what I mean? It would sit and we would eat donuts and she would tell me all about everything. And I loved it. And those are some like good memories. Does that make sense? So it's an interesting thing of like, yes, I can still have a lens of like what and how I share and what data gets maybe softened or shared at a later time. Pieces of it get pulled, threads of it get pulled out, but there is still this piece where I love to tell stories. My mom loved to tell stories. Sparrow loves to tell stories. That's part of our line, is to like be storytellers. So I'm like, well, maybe I don't need to worry as much because he like loves it, So
I
funny.
love that. And that's them, and that's us, as a parent being witnessed by our children. It's so intimate.
Mhm. It is
And
very
then
intimate.
seeing what they're doing and just it's that through line is
Mhm.
ultimately every human being is part of a collective, and our piece being seen and appreciated just because it's being seen. It doesn't have to become like this thing where everyone's in up in arms around it. That's not the point. The point is just it landing for whoever it does. And for me, it means a lot when I know, um, when I feel understood by those close to me. It matters.
It
It
does
feels
matter.
good.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. That's your tribe. That's your parents or your tribe or your soul family, whatever you call it. We all have our own tribe that we
For sure.
create and manifest. And then we can relax and actually create because there's space, because we're not so blinded by the void.
And I feel like being a mother is such a creative journey because it's so unpredictable. You really cannot predict all of the little pieces of the puzzle, no matter how, um, yeah, no matter how intuitive and how much you're tracking and like how aware you are. You just don't know, there's
Nope.
a lot of unpredictability and
It
adventure.
must be the part that we like about it, the
Yeah.
unpredictability.
Yes.
It keeps the adventure alive.
I do like, I feel like that's the easier part for me than some of the other. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes, it does. It
yeah,
does to me. It does to me.
yeah.
I get really afraid when there's a lot of expectation and there's this sense of you follow these steps or there's a format.
Hmm.
Those formats or systems, as wonderful and helpful as they can create a lot of anxiety for me that I don't appreciate. And that's just my personality. I'd rather, not know and see what happens, because then there's room to discover and there's room for failure without devastation, because I
Hmm.
didn't know and I get to learn and then know and then, do it differently the next time. Or yeah, the surprises are better for me personally.
For sure. Yeah, me too. I like the adventure of it,
I
but
did.
yeah. But some people may really struggle with that piece because they're more need the more predictability and consistency and structure, and that might be really, really, really hard. And the flip is the structure and that is harder for me, So I think we all have our
Absolutely.
growing edges on that. Like the
We
thought of
do.
like a
I can just see it in my motherhood tribe in South Africa, how different we all are. And some of us definitely gets devastated by my way going forward. I cannot
yeah,
tolerate what I can, because what I want or what I create is just so, yeah, it's unpredictable and there's too many surprises and they can't stand it.
yeah,
And
they
I
can't. It's
absolutely no, I get it. Absolutely. And clients, there's a way for us, there's a way for each individual that works, and it's pieces of all of it. Honestly, it's
yeah,
really
and I
the
think people have to honor like kind of your archetype, like your style and personality, and then look at like the style and personality of your child, and then you figure out in that soup. I never make soup, but like never made a pot of soup. But in that mixture of a soup of people, like what kind of thing gets created, and everybody's elements. Some are spicy, some are mild, some are, it's like a whole,
it's true. It is a soup. There's that beautiful story. I worked with it when I was doing a grief thing, and that's when it was gifted to me, the story of tear soup. So
hmm,
yeah, it's all about taking away the system and just knowing that we're all just making a pot of soup. And when we're grieving, it's tear soup. And maybe we're just busy making this family soup. Every soup is different. I love how you said that, all the different elements, and some is spicy, some is mild, depending on the family
yeah,
and all.
bland was probably not the most eloquent choice of words. I was trying to think of like, clearly I don't make
Did you?
soup.
I heard mild. So
Mild, I know. You reframed that for me. Thank you. As soon as I said it, I was like, bland. Clearly, we're a spicy bunch over here. That's why I'm afraid of being bland.
oh, no, I love it. So yeah, we are committing just to keep on going. And
Yes.
this is fun. And these conversations are enlightening to me. And let us know how you feel about it out there. What is your um resonance with this? What would you like to add to the conversation? I
Yeah.
think
What do you
go to
want to hear?
Instagram, I almost spoke some Afrikaans. Throw in some comments
Mhm.
or send us a DM message. Go to YouTube. Comments on YouTube's always welcome. Feedback is golden. That's
Yeah.
how it's landing, how you're feeling.
And
And
what you're experiencing in your journey, like does
yeah,
it resonate? Are you experiencing something different? What would you want to hear more of? Just all of it. We want to hear any of it, any and all of it. So we
yes.
want to have a conversation with the people listening too. That needs like that ideally would be like a reciprocal relationship in the sense of like,
Yeah.
we want to hear like all
Who
of it.
knows? Maybe we open the Zoom and you join us right here in the
Yeah,
mix.
that would be
Anything
fun
is
actually.
possible.
Yeah, I
So
was like another Wild West move. We're like, and then we open the Zoom, and then we have another channel you can do it either. But actually, I do like that idea. It's an interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you feel like you want to add your voice, we're open to it. I think
Hmm.
for now we can receive comments on YouTube and message us through Instagram, the
Yes.
Motherhood channel, and listen on Spotify and listen on Anchor. Put it on there. Follow us.
Yeah. So if you go to Instagram, if you go to the link tree in the bio, everything is in like one little spot. And if you're confused or like, where do we go? What do we do? Just DM us and we'll respond and let you know.
Yes.
Yay. I
Thanks for
love
joining
this.
us.
Thanks for tuning in. And we appreciate it. And I appreciate you. I'm so glad that we just took the leap and did it, like, okay. And
No
now,
matter what, here we
no
are,
matter what,
exhausted, traveling, no
all of
matter
it.
what happens, we are here. We are here witnessing one another and this channel, the Motherhood channel, where we channel all kinds of good and interesting things.
Interesting things.
Best love, everyone.
Thank you. Big love.